Chris Gabehart has left Joe Gibbs Racing, and Corey Heim has been confirmed to not be returning to Tricon Garage in the Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We got a ton of NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just show those really quickly. We're first going to take a look at a couple of paint schemes that have been revealed over the course of the last couple of days. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into them. The first paint scheme we're taking a look at is Chase Elliott's 2026 Napa scheme that we'll see in the 2026 season. Honestly, I think this is a downgrade compared to the 2025 one. I like what they're trying to do with this scheme, but to be honest, I think the 2025 one is much better. I like the all blue look to that one. This one, it just doesn't do a fantastic job for me as much as the other one. I think it's an alright paint scheme, but I definitely think it could be better. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Justin Allgaier, Connor Zilisch, and Rajah Caruth's 2026 Carolina carport schemes that we'll see in select races in 2026 in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. All these look really, really good. This is inspiration from Sam Bass. I think they absolutely knocked this one out of the park. The design looks phenomenal, and it's a fantastic looking cars. The next paint scheme we're taking a look at is Kyle Larson's 2026 HendrickCars.com scheme that we'll see in most races in 2026. I like there's not many changes to this car. Honestly, I don't really think you need to make too many changes to the car, plus it's an iconic look. I think it's a good looking car for sure. They always do a fantastic job. I think the HendrickCars.com car looks really good. And the final paint scheme we're taking a look at is Ty Majeski's 2026 Menard scheme that we'll see in most races in 2026. Ty Majeski obviously moving over to the 88 truck in the 2026 season. I think his truck looks really solid, very similar to one in 2025. You don't really need to make too many changes because simplicity is good, and good to see Ty Majeski getting the opportunity to drive the factory truck for the team in 2026. Really awesome stuff there. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Shane Van Gisbergen. As it was reported by the NASCAR Insights account a couple days ago, yesterday I should say, that Shane Van Gisbergen ran all 110 laps at Sonoma Raceway in the NASCAR Cup Series inside the top 5. This is only the third time since 2019 that has happened. The other two times, I think it might have been Kyle Larson at Homestead in 2022, and I believe it was Chase Briscoe maybe in the Southern 500 in 2025. That is absolutely kind of crazy to see how Shane Van Gisbergen never fell outside the top 5 even during green flag pit stops. It just showed how dominant he was in that event, and he put together a really good performance in that race. One of the most dominant performances we've seen from Shane Van Gisbergen on road courses up to this point. To finish and run the top 5 all day, I think that's an excellent accomplishment and pretty cool to see he got the opportunity to do that, and I think it's kind of crazy. It's only the third time in the last 6 years for that accomplishment to happen. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Toyota Gazoo. As it was officially confirmed earlier this morning that Toyota Gazoo will become the title partner of the Haas F1 team in 2026. It was announced, of course, last night that MoneyGram will not be the majority sponsor for the team for the 2026 season. So we're kind of wondering what the title partner was going to be for the team. We now know it's confirmed that Toyota Gazoo is going to be stepping up. Toyota, of course, joined the Haas team in 2025. And now they'll be stepping up and being the title partner for the program in 2026. This is going to be a really big deal. I think down the road, if Toyota does go back to Formula One in the future, I think that they eventually will be the team that goes to the Toyota manufacturer and won't have Ferrari engines down the road if Toyota ever decides to come back. This is a really big deal. Pretty good to see that Toyota Gazoo will become the title partner of the Haas F1 team in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cadillac. As was reported by Adam Stern on Wednesday, that Cadillac will debut its livery at the 2026 Super Bowl. It'll be one of the few liveries that are expected to run throughout the 2026 Formula One season. Obviously, Cadillac will be going to Formula One in 2026 and debuting your car at the Super Bowl, the biggest event that happens every single year in sports and across the world. This is a really, really huge deal for Cadillac because it's going to get a lot of people interested, potentially looking at maybe watching Formula One, even though it will go on Apple next year. And I think that Cadillac could do a really good job when it comes to their livery. So this is something that I think that's really exciting for Formula One fans and pretty awesome that Cadillac will get the opportunity to debut that livery at the Super Bowl. It's really exciting stuff, and I think it's good to see. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Bubba Wallace. As many of you probably seen over the last couple days, Bubba Wallace was actually on today's show on Wednesday. I think they were doing some sort of giveaway around a Toyota, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken. And Bubba Wallace is helping out communities, I think, in New York City, I'm pretty sure as well. Stuff like this is really huge for NASCAR. Obviously, today's show is not as big as it was even like 15 to 20 years ago. But I think having NASCAR drivers go out and do things to try to grow the sport, I think that is a really big deal. I mean, recently, Bubba Wallace, I believe, was on Sesame Street a couple weeks back, I'm pretty sure. And now we got the chance and opportunity to go on today's show on a network that NASCAR currently is on at this point. So I think that this was a pretty huge deal. A lot of people saw this. They got a lot of reception from a lot of people. Pretty huge deal and pretty awesome that Bubba got the chance and opportunity to go on today's show. Really good stuff to see, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Cup race at North Wilkesboro. As it was announced earlier today that the Cup race in North Wilkesboro has had an adjustment to the number of laps they are going to run for the Cup race in 2026. Remember, it was announced they originally were going to run 400 laps for the event. Well, as announced earlier today, they'll be extending the race from 400 laps to 450 laps in 2026. And so instead of calling it the Window World 400, it is going to be called the Window World 450. This is going to be one of the longest short track races in 2026. But if you know anything historically about North Wilkesboro, usually those races don't last longer than 2.5 hours for 400 laps. So this is going to be the longest race that's happened in North Wilkesboro history. But I really like that they're increasing the distance for some of these races. I don't personally have an issue with some races getting increased, especially short tracks, for example. Just hope the drivers can show some respect on the racetrack throughout the event. But I think it's a good decision in my opinion, and I think it's good they went ahead and extended it a little bit longer. I don't really have an issue with them extending it, so I think it's a decent time, and I think we'll probably get a decent race for sure, hopefully, at North Wilkesboro in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Qatar GP. As it was reported by Adam Stern when it comes to the ratings that ESPN got 1.4 million viewers for the Qatar GP. That is up from 990,000 in 2024. I believe that is around a 40% increase in 2024 compared to 2025. That is a really huge, big deal for Formula One because you look at the Las Vegas GP a couple weeks ago. That race went up a massive amount in ratings about 2 weeks ago as well. So Formula One is continuing to grow in the United States. I am really worried, though, that we're going to see less people tune in to Formula One once they do go to Apple, but I think it's been nice to see Formula One's continue to grow. The movie definitely played a big part of that, but I also think you've got a lot of interesting personalities and production of the stuff, production of companies, even though F1's been under some criticism recently for some of the stuff that happened with Kimi Antonelli. But I think it's a big deal, and I think it's great that Formula One is continuing to grow. It's growing faster than NASCAR, it seems like, at this point right now. It probably will burst at some point, that bubble, but I think it's a good thing to see, and awesome to see that a lot more people tune in to Formula One. You nearly had almost a 50% increase, which I think is a really good deal for that series, and pretty good to see Formula One continuing to grow at this point. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Will Power. As it was officially confirmed on Wednesday morning that Will Power will be running the 2026 Rolex 24. He will drive the Mercedes-AMG, I believe the number 75, for the event in 2026. There's obviously been some rumors and speculation. I believe that Will Power had expressed some interest in potentially running the Rolex 24 in 2026, but nothing had been officially confirmed at that point. But with him no longer working with Penske, and now him having the opening with, of course, he's going to be driving for Andretti next year, with him having the opening to go and drive for some different teams, he'll get the opportunity to drive in the Rolex 24 for Mercedes. I think the team he's going to be with, which I believe is a 75 team again, I think he will be a factor for the potential overall win, at least in the GT3 class, or at least the GT class in 2026. I think Will Power is a really good race car driver. We've seen what he's been able to do with IndyCar basically over the last 2 decades at this point, and he's a phenomenal driver, and I love seeing that he'll get the chance and opportunity to once again compete in the Rolex 24. I don't think it's the first time he's competing in the Rolex 24, I'm pretty sure, but I think it's still a big deal and pretty awesome to see Will Power getting the chance to race in a Rolex 24. I think it'll be fast. I think he certainly will be competitive, and I think he'll be a threat for some good runs. I'm looking forward to see what he can do in the Rolex 24 in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the Reaume Brothers. Now, Reaume Brothers earlier this afternoon, going into evening, they put out a little bit of a teaser on what they might be announcing. It looks like the Reaume Brothers, some point by the time any of you are watching this video, they will have an official announcement on their page, I believe either in the morning going into the early afternoon tomorrow. What it seems like to me is that they are going to be announcing one of their drivers for their team for 2026. Now, the big question is, who is this driver going to be? My best guess right now is that it is going to be Frankie Muniz. Now, there's obviously been some rumors that Frankie Muniz was potentially going to lead the team in 2026, but I'm not really sure if there's another better team at this point that is out there that is available currently at the moment. So my best guess is that it's Frankie Muniz. Frankie obviously wants to stay and race in NASCAR once again in 2026. Obviously, this year was a major frustration for Frankie. He had missed some races due to an injury, I think wrist injury, I'm pretty sure, after falling off a ladder. And the performance just wasn't there throughout the year, and he had a lot of DNS, he had a lot of mechanical issues, had some crashes he got involved in. I'm thinking he'll likely be the driver. I could also see it being someone like Lawes Allen, perhaps, who's driven for Reaume in the past. It could be someone we're not thinking about. Maybe like Josh Reaume's going to announce he's going to run a few races. Not sure at this point, but we'll see who gets behind the wheel. But like I said, Reaume will officially announce one of their drivers, and I expect it to be a pretty big announcement for the team. Again, my best guess right now, Frankie, maybe it's like someone we're not thinking about at this point, but I'm leaning toward Frankie Muniz being the driver for this team in 2026 at this point. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the NASCAR Creator Series. As they officially announced earlier this afternoon that they will be returning later this afternoon by the time you're watching around 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on December 5th. It will be streamed on NASCAR's Twitch page, I'm pretty sure. And they also will have new hosts going into this event. Originally, for the first Creator Series, they had Mamba Smith, Carson Osbar, and Todd Gillen being the hosts. For this time around, they've got two new hosts that are going to be hosting it. It's going to be Jeff Avanignano and Golden Boy. I looked up Golden Boy. I think Golden Boy does have a pretty big following on Twitch, I'm pretty sure. Also does have a pretty big following on Twitter, so he's going to be able to bridge a gap of getting a lot of a younger audience in. And then, of course, you have Jeff Avanignano. Jeff Avanignano has been a really big part of helping NASCAR 25 quite a bit, and he also someone that could bring a lot of the audience in. And that's what the goal of the NASCAR Creator Series is trying to bring a bigger audience and trying to make them become fans of NASCAR and also the game as well. Again, the first iteration of this event was a massive disaster. Everyone knows how big of a fumble it was, and they just seemed to be rushed, and they weren't ready. I mean, when they originally announced this a couple days before, everyone was kind of questioning, because this came out of left field. No one was really expecting it. It seemed like it had been in the works for a while, but it just was a complete disaster, the first iteration. I think having two people who have experience on the online side makes a lot of sense to me. I think in general it's a good move to bring these guys in, and I think it'll be much better this time around. Hopefully it will be, because I think it needs to be successful so that NASCAR 25 can be in a good position. I think it's a good move to bring people in who have the experience on the online side as well, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Taylor Reimer. Now, as reported by the Daily Downforce before their Twitter account pretty much got suspended, it seemed like, but they reported earlier today that Taylor Reimer, it sounds like, is expected to join Pinnacle Racing Group in the ARCA Menard Series in 2026 and run around 7-8 races in the 2026 ARCA season. Now, keep in mind, this is currently just a rumor at this point. But if this is true, this is a really big deal for Taylor Reimer. Obviously, Pinnacle Racing Group is a team in ARCA that's been on the up and up. They had a lot of success with Connor Zilch in 2024, where I believe Connor Zilch had like 6 or 7 wins with that program, including some big wins at big intermediates like Michigan. Of course, winning the Watkins Glen race as well. And then in 2025, they brought Brendan Butterbean Queen into the program on a full-time basis. Brendan won 7 or 8 races in 2025 and went on to win the ARCA Championship. There's been other drivers who've been linked over to that program also for 2026. Laney Bice has also mentioned as a possibility for that program if Rev Racing, it sounds like, no longer existing in the ARCA Menard Series in 2026. There's other names like Eli Falcon also looking for their rides for going into next year. But for Taylor Reimer, I think she's a talented driver. Yes, she doesn't have a lot of experience on the bigger ovals at this point, but I do truly think there is potential for her there. And I think going to PRG, you're going to be driving for one of the best teams, and that's a team that's won a lot of races over the last couple of years. They've been the best Chevrolet team. So I think if she does end up going there, I think there's a lot of potential for her to have a lot of success. Wouldn't surprise me if she maybe gets a win. We'll see if that happens, but a great opportunity for her for sure. And if it does end up happening, I think it's a solid opportunity. Hope she gets the opportunity because she deserves a good opportunity. We'll see if she does, in fact, end up heading over to Pinnacle, because I think it could be a good deal for her if she ends up heading over there in 2026. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Brent Crews. Now, throughout this week so far, a lot of people from Racer, a lot of people on the journalistic side of Racer have been having their thing they usually do every single year. They do this like insider Q&A thing where they bring a lot of big-time personalities on, people that are higher-ups, drivers, people that are owners of teams, among other things, on their questionnaire throughout the week. And there's a question asked from the Toyota executive, that being Tyler Gibbs, who took over about a year or so ago. And he was basically asked, who is someone coming up currently at the moment in the Toyota ranks they're very high on currently at the moment? Well, Tyler Gibbs mentioned Brent Crews. He says Toyota is very high on Brent Crews currently at the moment. They know that Brent has not currently raced in the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series, which of course he will be going there full time once he does turn 18 years old. But they think that Brent Crews in 2026 is going to win multiple races and be a championship contender throughout the year. I have to agree with Tyler Gibbs on this. If you guys have seen Brent Crews throughout the last year or so, this young man has been doing a really, really good job. He's been super competitive on everything he's gotten behind the wheel of. He's won some dirt races. He, of course, is the youngest winner and youngest champion in the TA2 series, the Trans Am series. And on top of that as well, he's won multiple ARCA races, has a couple ARCA West victories. And in the Craftsman Truck Series, when you look at Tricon, he was a lot of times the second fastest Tricon truck out there and was in the field behind Corey Heim, who of course had a 12-win season in the Truck Series. When you also look at top prospects, you've got guys, of course, like Corey Heim and Connor Zilch. Connor, of course, going full-time cup racing. But then, in my opinion, you have guys like Brent Crews and Just Love very close together because both those guys are very talented. And you think about the future also for Brent Crews. A lot of people are leaning toward that he will be Denny Hamlin's replacement if things go well for him. He might be driving that 11 car in 2028. I am very excited for the future of Brent Crews. I think this young kid has a lot of potential to be extremely successful, and I think he's going to be really fun to watch in the O'Reilly Series in 2026. I expect him to be pretty fast. I do expect him to be quick this season, and I think it's going to be a fun year for him with that team. He's also working with the same team that won the Owners' Championship with Eric Almirola at Phoenix, so he's going to have a lot of pressure on him, but I think he'll live up to the pressure and hype, and I think he'll do a really good job this year. And I also do think he'll make some truck starts as well. I think he's got a really good opportunity with this team in 2026, that being JGR. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Parker Eatmon. As it was announced early Wednesday morning that Parker Eatmon will drive the 42 for Nice Motorsports in select NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series races in 2026. Now, the number of races was not disclosed in the announcement, but I have to guess it's probably only going to be around 3 or 4 races in 2026. Considering the fact that Tyler Reif is going to drive in a majority of races in the 2026 season in that number 42. And then, of course, we also know Connor Jones, it was confirmed a couple days ago as well, he will be driving a 42 truck also on select races in the 2026 year. Now, I did a little bit of digging on Parker Eatmon. I think Parker's not even fully 18 years old at this point, but he's won some big races. In fact, the Thanksgiving Classic, which I believe that Dale Jr. competed in at Myrtle Beach, I'm pretty sure, something like that, he won the Thanksgiving Classic not too long ago, back in 2024, and he's also won some big late model races and did compete in the Cars Tour in 2025 as well. He was one of the drivers at one point also, I believe, was linked toward the Kaulig Ram program, I'm pretty sure, for 2026 for that truck, the Gong Show truck, which we know some stuff around that. He obviously didn't end up winning, which is why he's over at Nice. But you look at Nice Motorsports going into 2026, it seems like they're kind of transitioning more to a lot of late model guys in their program. You think about Connor Jones. You think about Tyler Reif, who comes from the young crop. You think about Landon Lewis. And there's another driver who's currently linked at the moment right now, that being Connor Hall, who comes from the late model scene, who drove for Junior Motorsports in 2025. He's expected to also potentially be a Nice candidate in 2026. So I think this is not a bad move for the team and organization to bring a lot of these late model guys in, and I like they're changing things up over there. Matt Mills, by the way, is also expected to be with this program in 2026 as well. But for Parker, it's a solid opportunity. opportunity. Looking forward to see what he can do in 2026, and we'll see if we can have some good performances with this team and program in the 2026 Craftsman Truck season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Tricon Garage. As earlier this afternoon going to evening, Tricon Garage put out a teaser announcement that they will be announcing one of their drivers for the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series champion by the time many of you are watching this video at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. They'll be announcing their driver for the 11 truck in 2026. We're going to be talking about Corey Heim a little bit later, but we obviously know that Corey Heim will not be back with Tricon Garage in the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season. So who is expected to take over this 11 truck in 2026? Some are trying to explain Corey Heim, but like I mentioned earlier, it was confirmed yesterday that he will not be back with the program. The understanding is that Caden Honeycutt, who drove for Reimer Friesen Racing near the end of the season, Caden is expected to drive the number 11 truck for Tricon Garage in 2026. He's been linked over that program for the last couple months, and many in the Toyota stable are very much high on Caden Honeycutt currently at the moment. You think about what Caden Honeycutt has been doing the last couple years. He drove for Nice Motorsports pretty much most of the season in 2024. Put together some really strong performances with that team. Probably should have won a few races. That Kansas race in the spring I think about. I think about some of the races in the summer where he was really, really good, like Charlotte, for example. And he almost won Homestead also in 2024 as well. And there were a couple times as well with Nice Motorsports this year before he got let go where he was a major factor. Then he joins Reimer Friesen Racing and becomes an instant contender for wins and nearly wins a few races near the end of the season as well. Well, going into next year with Caden expected to go over there, my expectations are for Caden is I don't see Caden Honeycutt going out there and picking up 12 wins like Corey Heim did. But I do think he'll get 4 or 5 wins more than likely. I expect Caden to be really, really fast. I'll probably talk more about it once the official announcement comes out about Caden being over there. But I really like that they're bringing him in. I think Caden is a really, really talented driver, and he's done some good things coming up. And I'm excited to see what he can do with this team. I think he'll be the leader of the team. The other big question is who else is driving for the program. It sounds like Gia Rogero will be back with the team in 2026. And Tony Breidinger, despite the fact there were some rumors not long ago about going to Kaulig, she's expected also to return to Tricon Garage in 2026. And there's a few other drivers who are linked over there. And we do think Corey will be there at least maybe part-time, but he's not expected to be full-time with that program. And I think for Caden, though, it's going to be a good opportunity. We'll get a chance and opportunity to join a really strong organization next year. We'll see how he can do with the Tricon Garage team in the 2026 truck season. I think it's going to be fun to see what he can do. I think he'll be a factor and a pretty good contender in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Taylor Gray. Now, we talked about this on the channel in a video earlier this week, but Taylor Gray went on Sirius M NASCAR Radio a couple days ago, and he did confirm that he will be returning to Joe Gibbs Racing in the 2026 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series season. He will continue driving number 54 car in 2026. His crew chief will once again continue to be in Jason Ratcliffe. Now, the sponsor was also not confirmed for him, but it is expected that, I believe, Operation 3000, which is sponsored for a lot of races in 2025 and also in the truck series when he drove for Tricon, that is expected to be the majority sponsor for the 2026 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series season. This move makes a lot of sense. I think Taylor Gray this year was actually surprisingly really, really good. Going into this season, I wasn't very much high on Taylor Gray because while I think Taylor Gray is a talented race car driver, let's be real and honest, he was taking away the seat, I believe, of Chandler Smith, who was just coming off and having an unbelievable season in the O'Reilly Series in 2024 with 2 victories and almost making the championship 4. And had we had a full season format, he basically would have won the championship with his consistency throughout the year. So my expectations were great. Wasn't going to do really good. But I was really surprised by his performance this year. I think he had some really strong and really good performances in 2025. Picked up the win in Martinsville. Nearly won that race in Mexico City. Almost took out Daniel Suarez to get that one, but he didn't get it done. And then the spring Martinsville race, I remember how strong he was in that event. He put together a great performance there. Probably should have won the race if not for Sammy Smith dumping him. He would have gone to victory lane in the race. I do believe that Taylor Gray is only going to continue to get better because there were more races that he could have won than just that Martinsville race. So what are my expectations for Taylor Gray going into 2026? Realistically, I think Taylor Gray is going to win not just once, but I think he gets multiple victories in 2026, and I think he's going to actually put himself in the championship conversation. And I wouldn't be surprised or shocked if he does end up becoming the de facto leader of this program next year. You're going to have a lot of young drivers in the program. Brent Crews, we know will be with the team. William Swalch is also expected to be back with the program. Now, obviously, you've got Brandon Jones, who is the oldest driver in the team. But I think there were times this year where you can argue that 54 car was faster than the 20 car. So I do think this upcoming season, I think Taylor Gray is going to be a factor to win some races. I wouldn't be surprised if he becomes the winningest driver of this team in 2026. I am very excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. I think he's going to be fun to watch. I like him a lot. I think that he's got potential to be a Cup Series driver down the road as well. I think he's done a really good job in O'Reilly, especially he did some good things also in 2024, but I think he was really solid this year, and I think he's only going to continue to get better, and I think he's going to do some good things in that 54 car in the 2026 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series season. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Rajah Caruth. As we talked about this on the channel, but it was officially confirmed earlier today that Rajah Caruth will be joining Jordan Anderson Racing in select NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series races in 2026. He will drive the number 32 car for the 2026 season for 10 races in 2026. It was all this, which confirms that Rajah Caruth is going to drive the number 88 car for 23 races in 2026, with Marty Lindley being the crew chief on that car. I think there's a couple questions that do need to be asked. Number one, will those races that Rajah Caruth drive in the 32, will those races be prepared under the Junior Motorsports stable? Will Junior Motorsports prepare those cars? Because obviously he's under contract with Junior Motorsports in 2026. I think that's the first big question. Second big question, how is he going to do with this Jordan Anderson Racing team? We all kind of knew this likely was going to come, but how is he going to do? Because Jordan Anderson Racing is a team that I feel like is a hit or miss team at points. I think it's a team that's shown some promise. We saw some good things from Jeb Burton this year, where Jeb Burton nearly made the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series playoffs. And then, of course, he nearly won a few races throughout the year. But then, of course, there were some struggles at times. And I think about Blaine Perkins, who's going to be back with the program in 2026, where there just wasn't a lot of great performances. I think Rajah's a very talented driver. I think he is going to show some good stuff this upcoming season. I think he will be a factor to win races with that 88 car. I just don't know if that will happen with the 32 car, and I'm not expecting Rajah to contend for victories overall in the 32 unless those cars are truly prepared by Junior Motorsports, because Jordan Anderson Racing has a really big alliance with ECR, and you can have a potential conflict of interest that could come up when you have those programs being separate at that point. I think Rajah scores a couple top 20s, but I expect him to run mid to back of the pack more than likely in that 32, depending on the performance of that team. As far as his time in the 88 car next year, I expect him to be a factor because he's going to be working Marty Lindley, who just had an amazing season with Connor Zilisch this year in the O'Reilly Series, where Connor should have won the championship, but I digress. But I think that Rajah is going to be fun to watch in the O'Reilly Series this year. I'm excited to see where this program can go, and I think Rajah will be fun. I think it's going to be a pretty good year for him in the O'Reilly Series. I think he's going to be one of the factors for the Rookie of the Year also. I look forward to see what he can do, and I think it'll be a good year for Rajah Caruth with both organizations, hopefully, in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Anthony Alfredo. As it was officially announced earlier today that Anthony Alfredo will be joining Viking Motorsports in the 2026 NASCAR Rally Auto Parts Series season. He will be driving the number 96 and a second car for the Viking Motorsports team next year. It was also confirmed as well that Josh Graham will be the crew chief for Anthony Alfredo in 2026. There's been a lot of rumors and speculation over the course of the last couple weeks that likely this is going to be the place that he was going to end up going to, because there was some talk that he could return to Young's Motorsports in 2026 with that team expanding. I'm not sure he'll be driving a 42 car next year, but then rumors began to circulate that Viking was going to expand to a 2-car operation. There's been a lot of talk also that Viking Motorsports bought a lot of the Kaulig Racing stuff up because, of course, Kaulig Racing will not have an O'Reilly Auto Parts program in 2026, and they sold off a lot of their stuff to other organizations. And for what it sounds like, Viking Motorsports got a lot of the stuff from them for 2026. As for Anthony Alfredo joining this program, I think this is a no-brainer move for this team. Anthony Alfredo is a veteran of the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series. He's done a really good job bringing up some good teams. Think about our Motorsports a few years ago back in 2024. He was a playoff contender that year. He almost made the playoffs, won a Dasher cash at Dover, I'm pretty sure. And he had some really good runs and had a couple top fives and a couple top tens. And I think he almost won a pole with this organization in 2024, that being our. And you think about Viking going into next year, it has an ECR Alliance, and Anthony Alfredo is very heavily aligned with the ECR Alliance cars. So it makes a lot of sense for him going to the program. Now, what are my expectations for the Viking Motorsports team? Because they're also going to have Parker Retzlaff in the Factory 99 car next year. I do expect that you're going to see Anthony Alfredo have some good stuff next year. I think he will have a better year than he did in 2025. He didn't really have a great season with the Young's Motorsports team, where that team did show some potential. But let's be real and honest, Young's Motorsports doesn't have the same budget that Viking Motorsports is going to have going into next year. And I think that Anthony will have a much better year. I think he finishes a few more positions higher in the standings than he did in 2025. I think he'll have some top 15s and even a couple occasional top 10s. But I think for Viking, this is a really good move. The 96 has not been used as a full-time car in O'Reilly since maybe when they brought the 96 out when Ben Kennedy was driving, I'm pretty sure, at select points. And other drivers were driving for the team in 2017 and 2018. So I think it's good to see the 96 back. I think it's a good opportunity, too, as well. For Anthony Alfredo, I think it's going to be a good season. I'm excited to see what he can do with the Viking Motorsports team in the 2026 O'Reilly Auto Parts Series season. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story in today's episode as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon confirmed yesterday that he'll be returning to Kaulig Racing in 2026. He will continue driving number 10 car in the 2026 season, and Seafood Best will continue being the majority sponsor for him in 2026. There were a lot of rumors and a lot of speculation whether Ty Dillon was going to return to this program on a full-time basis in 2026 because a partnership with Kaulig and ECR was done with the Ram program coming in to work with Kaulig in 2026. And I kind of thought there really wasn't going to be a possibility that Ty Dillon was going to return to this team, at least on a full-time sense, in 2026. But honestly, with this being a stopgap year for Kaulig Racing going into next year, this move doesn't entirely shock me and surprise me. Now, 2025 for Ty Dillon was a year of ups and downs. On one hand, he had a really good chance and opportunity to win the in-season tournament, actually made it to the finals after having some pretty good runs during that time, and had his best stretch during that portion of the season, and nearly won that in-season tournament. On the other hand, there were some downs this past year for Ty Dillon. He did have a worse year in 2025 than Daniel Hemrick did. Daniel Hemrick, I think, had a couple top fives, and I think he doubled the amount of top tens than Ty Dillon had. I think Ty Dillon this year only scored 1 or 2 top tens and finished around 33rd or 34th in the points. It was really, for the most of the year, a big struggle, but once they cut off that support from ECR, I think that's when performance even got worse for Ty Dillon compared to even earlier portion of the season. For Ty Dillon, though, this isn't a bad move for him to stay with the Kaulig Racing team because just in case he does get the chance to go to Ram instead of being with Chevrolet down the road, I think then this could be a potential guy that you could use. Now, big questions is that what are the expectations for Ty Dillon going into 2026? Realistically, I don't expect much from Ty Dillon in 2026. I think he's going to run maybe around what he did in 2025. It may even be worse. I wouldn't be surprised he ends up finishing around 34th or 35th in the full season standings because I think Riley Hurst is actually going to improve and do a little better this upcoming year. I think that Noah Gragson is going to run a little better. Those guys actually finished behind Ty Dillon this year in points. I think Ty Dillon likely finishes around that 34th to 35th range in the standings. I think he does get one top 10 this year more than likely. Does get some top 15s and top 20s, but for the most part this year, because of the lack of support from Chevrolet, I think this team is really just going to struggle on a really big basis, and I just don't expect Ty Dillon to really have a good year. Maybe he'll prove me wrong and actually have a good season, because I think Ty Dillon does have talent, but he didn't do great. On one hand, I could also see Ty Dillon driving the All-Star truck in 2026. We're going to talk about that here in just a short little bit, but I do think that Ty Dillon could get the opportunity to make some truck series starts with Kaulig Racing as well. I think that with the lack of Chevy support, I think that's very likely. I also would not be surprised also if you see him make some select starts in the O'Reilly series with RCR this year, or perhaps Jordan Anderson Racing, because I still think he'll have the connections over there. Maybe his performance will be better because maybe ECR will help, but again, I don't expect expect that to happen next year. But again, this move isn't the most shocking surprise, and there's been rumors and rumblings around this that he was going to maybe return or maybe not. I had heard maybe that Justin Haley and Christian Eckes were going to make maybe a few select starts with the program in that 10 car, which I do think that they're going to make starts potentially in a third Kaulig car at some point in 2026. I do think that's a possibility. Who knows at this point? Nonetheless, a good opportunity for Ty Dillon to stick around, and he once again continue driving for Kaulig Racing in the 2026 NASCAR Cup season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kaulig Racing. Now, we talked about the story on the channel earlier today, but they officially have confirmed their lineup for the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season. They've confirmed their number lineup as well. The numbers they're going to use in 2026 are 10, 12, 14, 16, and 25. We already knew two of the numbers they were going to be using for 2026. It was a number 10 car, which if you've seen a lot of the promo pictures they released, that was a number they were expected to be using. And the 25 was also confirmed for the free agent truck for 2026. But there were still some questions around what other numbers they are going to use for 2026. But now we officially know what those numbers are going to be. Let's go through each of the trucks. Obviously, we talked about the free agent truck. We'll talk about that here in just a second. The number 10 truck is going to be driven by Daniel Dye. Daniel Dye, obviously, of course, we already know will be with this team in 2026. The number 10 truck is one of the iconic trucks, I think, in trucks recently, too. And that number's been used for the Kaulig brand. Plus, he drove the number 10 in the O'Reilly Series in 2025. So it does make sense for him to be in the number 10 truck next year. Then you've got the number 12. That'll be driven by Brendan Butterbean Queen. Brendan, in my opinion, could be the leader of this program in 2026, considering Brendan Butterbean Queen had a really strong year in ARCA in 2025, and in the few select races he ran for Kaulig Racing in the O'Reilly Series in 25, he looked really fast and really, really strong and competitive out there. So I think Brendan could be a factor to win 2 or 3 races. The number 14 truck is going to be the winner of the Gong Show. Kaulig Racing's been filming this Gong Show. Dana White has been also involved with that as well. It's kind of known who is the winner of that, but out of due respect, I'm not going to say who I think won the Gong Show, but I kind of have a little bit of an indication who did win the Gong Show, but the winner of the Gong Show is going to be the driver of this truck. The number 16 is going to be driven by Justin Haley. But 16 has been a number that Kaulig Racing has used since 2019. It was the first number they used for the Cup Series program back in 2020, and they still use that number to this day for AJ Allmendinger. They're going to be using that for Justin Haley in 2026. Looking at Justin Haley this upcoming season, I think that Justin Haley is going to be a pretty big factor and strong contender for wins throughout the year. He could also potentially be the leader of this program. He's got more experience in NASCAR than anybody else on this team. So I think having that experience, but being the second youngest of this program, I think that's something that could really put him in a good position to be a factor and contender. And then, of course, the 25 truck. This is going to be the free agent truck. Every single week, there is going to be a new driver that is going to be announced to this program. We've heard names mentioned like Tony Stewart, Casey Kane's a mention, Robbie Gordon's a mention, Cletus McFarland's a mention for the truck, Elliott Saller's been mentioned at points. I've heard Matt Kenseth's been mentioned as a possibility. Ryan Newman's been mentioned as a possibility. I also think Greg Biffle is another driver who could be a candidate for this program also. And there's a few other names that I do expect to be in the running, like a Jimmy Johnson or even a Will Brown at some point, or maybe like a Brock Feeney, but they're associated with Ford, so maybe not. And then, of course, AJ Allmendinger and Ty Dillon, I think, are also going to end up being candidates for this program also in 2026. Kaulig, I think there's going to be some times where this team is probably going to have struggles in 2026. I think that there are going to be times where this program will be somewhat down in performance. But I think as the season goes on and Rams gets their foot afloat, I think this team will be really fun to watch. I think this organization combined gets around maybe 5 to 6 wins. I do think that Brendan Queen and Justin Haley are going to win. I think some of the people who are in the Gong Show team, I think they're potentially going to win races as well. Daniel Dye, I think, is probably the weakest of the three. I expect Daniel Dye to be hit or miss in 2026. But I think that Kaulig's truck program is in really, really good shape. I think it's in really good hands going into the next season. And I'm excited for this program going next year, honestly. I think it's going to be a fun year for this team, a really fun year for the program. And I expect this program to show some good things in the 2026 Craftsman Truck season. And down the road, you will see them work with the Fords and move up to Cup in the future once Dodge does eventually make their return up to NASCAR Cup competition. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about the 2311 front row / NASCAR trial. Now, I've not really talked a lot about the NASCAR trial over the course of the last couple days because I don't want to keep talking about the trial on this channel every single day unless there's something very interesting that does come from the trial. There's been a lot of interesting information that has surfaced around the trial over the course of the last couple days. Let's go back to Wednesday. Scott Prime continued his testimony on the scene. He actually had given as part of his testimony in day number 2. There's a lot of information that kind of surfaced in day number 2 and basically throughout day number 2 where a lot of information came out about text messages that came out between Scott Prime, Steve Phelps, Steve O'Donnell throughout the days, and even Ben Kenny as well with some of those text message chains. And it seemed like there were some times he kind of contradicted himself throughout this point. And it seemed like there were times where on the NASCAR side, they were getting a little bit frustrated with Scott Prime, it seemed like, but he also kind of seemed like he was on the side with the team, some of the negotiations that were going on, and also some of the funding and some of the things about the gold codes, among other things, which kind of talked about on the channel in the past, but a lot of the good codes and the goodwill clauses, among other things, were talked about as well with the goodwill provisions that kind of came out as well, which I found to be very, very interesting. Some of the funding and finances came out for Scott Prime, which I think he revealed he made $400,000 in the position, which he is the EVP. And then, of course, it was found out that I think 2311 paid $168,000 in internet, I'm pretty sure, which I thought was absolutely wild. Then you look at Bob Jenkins. Bob Jenkins went on the stand at the beginning of Wednesday and finished up his testimony on Thursday. And Bob Jenkins revealed some interesting information that he actually was one point part of the Dale Earnhardt fan club. I was not around at the time when this stuff was happening, but Dale Earnhardt fan club was a major, major thing. He was a big fan of Dale Earnhardt for many years, and that's what really got him interested in being involved in the sport. Now, at the end of the day, Bob Jenkins also revealed some other information. It seems like NASCAR side was trying to go through circles. I think it was Lawrence Buterman. He was on the stand trying to go after Bob Jenkins here, where basically he reveals some outside information. He says that he's not really mad about the charter system itself. He thinks the charter system is good, but he wants the charter system to be fair. He also is seeking $140 million in damages. We know 2011 is seeking $200 million in damages through this trial. We know they're seeking $140 million. Bob Jenkins was reportedly worth $60.2 million for the Front Row Motorsports team, but he's also talking about he doesn't spend a lot of money. He's still not making money currently at the moment, and some of the letters, among other things, he felt like were completely outrageous in that case. At the conclusion of day number 3, Judge Kenneth Bell was not happy with NASCAR. He seen that they had 2 violations throughout the trial where they basically were talking about Bob Jenkins' expenses outside of the NASCAR side of things, talk about his personal businesses. They had actually told the judge that they were not going to bring this up in the trial, and for some reason NASCAR's group tried to bring it up in the trial. And day number 3, from what a lot of people had said who were in the courtroom, like Jeff Gluck, John Newby, Peter Strada, Jordan Bianchi, they kind of said that, and Bob Pockers too, kind of seemed like at day number 3 that the teams had a much better win in the case so far than NASCAR has so far. Then we get to day number 4. And there was a tweet that actually surfaced from Mark Martin, where Mark Martin, I think, brought up a really good point in this tweet. He is scared for the future of the sport right now. I think there's a lot of people also in the industry looking at this that are a little bit scared about what the future is going to bring. Because I think a lot of people are looking at this and they're saying, oh, that the sport is going to be in a much better position if the teams win. And while I think there's potential for that to happen, a lot of livelihoods are at stake currently at the moment right now. There's another thing I kind of want to also bring up as well. There's been a lot of people saying, oh, NASCAR is being a monopoly. It's already been confirmed, and the judge even confirmed this also, that NASCAR has a monopoly on stock car racing. The reason we're at this trial is to determine if NASCAR has gone overboard on that monopoly power and if they've abused that monopoly power. It's not illegal to have a monopoly. You just can't abuse that power in that monopoly per to. So quintessentially, that was a big loss in day number 3 for the teams, but the monopoly thing I kind of want to talk about there. Moving on, Steve O'Donnell went up to have his testimony. And it seemed like there was a lot of back and forth between Jeffrey Kessler and, of course, Steve O'Donnell, where there was points where Jeffrey Kessler was getting upset and screaming at Steve O'Donnell, where Steve O'Donnell got a little bit of reaction, I think, from the jury, where he basically told him, you don't have to yell and scream at me, I can hear you. He didn't really say that, but he kind of said, I can hear you, you don't have to pretty much yell at me. And at that point, I'm thinking, he kind of had a really good contradiction there at that point. At the end of day number 4, They were basically told that by Judge Kenneth Bell finally after 4 days that they need to speed up getting through the testimonies. I'm glad that Judge Kenneth Bell is finally saying something honest. The teams and NASCAR side both told Judge Kenneth Bell they were going to have this trial done within 2 weeks. We're on day number 4 of this trial. We have 6 days to get through the trial at this point. The judge does not want to be back for another week in the courtroom. He wants to have this done by Christmas. And the fact they told Judge Kenneth Bell they were going to be done in the 2 weeks and they're still not even close to being done, it's kind of crazy because they still got to get Heather Gibbs on the testimony in the witness stand. Richard Chodos, from what I understand, he's supposed to get on. And Roger Penske also, they're trying to schedule him for like Monday or Tuesday, but you have Jeffrey Kessler saying we're still not done at this point. And they want 7 days and NASCAR gets 3 days at this point. At this point, I'm not sure who's going to win the trial, but it's finally time to start speeding up the trial and get things done. We'll see what happens, and we'll see how things go through, but I found some of the things interesting so far in updates on the trial. And now we're going to jump on to the first of 2 major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Corey Heim. As it was officially confirmed last night that Corey Heim will not be returning to Tricon Garage in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series in 2026. In a post from Tricon Garage earlier last night, they basically said, "We thank you, Corey Heim, for everything you've done for this team and program throughout the 2025 season, and we wish you the best of luck." There's obviously been a lot of indications, more than likely, that Corey Heim is not going to return to Tricon Garage in the 2026 NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series season, but it never was officially confirmed and announced, and now we know it's official. He will not be back with the program. This is one of the worst kept secrets in the industry. Obviously, we don't really fully entirely know what Corey Heim is going to be doing for 2026, but also this definitely is a really big disappointment for Corey Heim because it sounds like from what's been reported out there that Corey Heim does not even have a full-time ride currently at the moment in any series for 2026, despite the fact that I think we all know that he is ready for a Cup Series ride. I think he absolutely 100% should be in the number 35 car currently at the moment over Riley Herbst. There's no disrespect to Riley Herbst, but Riley Herbst had one of the worst rookie seasons in NASCAR history, period. Didn't even score a single top 10 finish this year, only had one top 15 finish, and Corey Heim in 4 or 5 Select Racing Cup had more top 15 finishes and even had a top 10 or even 2 top 10 finishes where Herbst didn't even score a single top 10 in 2025, be one of only 2 drivers. But again, it comes down to sponsorship funding, and that's one of the biggest reasons, unfortunately, at this moment, why Corey Heim does not have a ride at this time for 2026. You think about everything that Corey Heim has accomplished over at Tricon Garage over the last couple of years. He has been a major factor for championships. In 2023, Corey Heim had a 3-win season in the NASCAR Truck Series. Did, I believe, end up making the championship for that year, but ended up finishing last of the 4 drivers because, of course, he got dumped by Carson Hocevar in the season finale, and they had their beef throughout. Then 2024 was an improvement. Corey Heim had about a 5 or 6 win season in 2024, ended up making the championship for that year, ended up finishing second of the four drivers in there, finished second in the title. The only reason he didn't win is because Ty Majeski had a better truck in that single race and lost the title that year. But of course also Christian Eckes was the most consistent. But then in 2025 was a year that not only was a memorable one of the most spectacular seasons in NASCAR history. Corey Heim in 25 starts had 12 wins, the most wins for a single driver in a season in Craftsman Truck Series history. He had, I believe, 18 or 19 top 5s, had 22 top 10s, I believe, or 21 or 22 top 10s, and put together one of the most consistent seasons where his average finish was like a 3.7 or a 3.8. And he's won 21 races for the organization, more than anybody else. And despite that, he won't be back with this program next year. And I find that, again, to be really disappointing for Corey Heim. Because like I mentioned before, the guy can absolutely, without question, drive a race car. And he is ready for a full-time Cup Series stint. But again, like I mentioned many times before, you got to have funding and you got to have sponsorship to be in a car in this sport. And unfortunately for Corey Heim, that's the biggest disadvantage for him. So again, the big question is, who will replace Corey Heim at Tricon Garage in 2026? I think it will, like I mentioned earlier, I expect it to be Caden Honeycutt who will be driving that number 11 truck next year. Caden has been linked over to that program for the last couple of months especially, and Fox kind of revealed it also during the broadcast, I'm pretty sure, speaking to him, that it kind of revealed that Caden is expected to head over to Tricon next year. But I think you look at Caden compared to Corey Heim, I don't think Caden Honeycutt is going to put up the same numbers that Corey Heim put up in 2025. I expect Caden to get multiple victories, but not put up those same numbers. And as for Corey Heim's future, obviously he's not going to be with Joe Gibbs Racing next year. That line is pretty much set, and there's been beef between Corey Heim and Ty Gibbs in recent years, going all the way back to 2021. And that's a big reason why he hasn't gotten the opportunity there. And they're still waiting on what's going to happen with 20 through 11, depending on what happens with the trial. And if they win the trial, if they get their charters back or not, then I think that means some stuff for Corey Heim. But I'm disappointed to see we don't even know what the official indication was, because we thought he would be at least with Sam Hunt Racing in some way, shape, or form in the O'Reilly Series this year, but I'm not sure if they're even going to have a third car in 2026. It sounds more than likely they may not, because they're going to have Harrison Burton in the 24, and Dean Thompson is back at the program next season. So I think there's some questions around that also at the moment, but I hope that he can find a ride next year. I think he's one of the best prospects NASCAR has currently at the moment. Connor Zolch is up there. Corey Heim is up there. Carson Quaffle, Brent Crews, Jesse Love, you name it. Brendan Queen, even Keelan Harvick, I'd argue, are guys. And Gio Ruggiero, too, who's also expected to be back with Tricon next year as well. For some good prospects in NASCAR. And I think for Corey Heim, another option could be Homer Friesen Racing. They're looking to run a second truck. If he can't find a full-time ride in any series, I think that's where he could also potentially end up. Who knows at this point, but it's definitely disappointing and sad to see that Corey Heim will not be racing full-time in NASCAR next year, it sounds like, and won't be returning to Tricon Garage in 2026. And now we're going to head on to the final major story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chris Gabehart. Now, we talked about the story on the channel very late in the afternoon, going into the evening, but it was announced, I believe it was on Wednesday, and reported on Wednesday in the middle of the afternoon, that Chris Gabehart has reportedly left Joe Gibbs Racing. While Jenna Fryer from the Associated Press and the reporters did confirm, speaking to media members, they did confirm that Chris Gabehart has left Joe Gibbs Racing effective immediately. Denny Hamlin, during the trial on Wednesday, basically had no comment on the official announcement there. Now, Joe Gibbs Racing himself has not officially released a presser statement at this point, but there's been rumors and speculation around this, and obviously we kind of talked about this, but this definitely came up as a little bit of a surprise. I started hearing rumors about this a couple days ago, going back I think to Sunday and Monday, and then it started picking up a couple days ago in the industry. People started reporting on it, and then it became officially confirmed. Now, what happened and why has Chris Gabehart left the program? I think there's 2 or 3 reasons why has Chris Gabehart maybe left the team. Number one, probably wasn't happy with the position he was in. Remember, just about a year or so ago, he was a crew chief for Denny Hamlin. He and Denny Hamlin had a ton of success from 2019 up to 2024. Denny Hamlin made the championship 4 in 3 of those 4 or 7 years, and Denny Hamlin had the most success he's had in his NASCAR career in the 2019 to 2024 stretch. But at the end of 2024, Chris Gabehart was moved away from being the crew chief for Denny Hamlin to go into the competition director role. And then, of course, halfway through the year, he got moved to work with Ty Gibbs. And this is reason number 2. I do think him working with Ty Gibbs and having some of the squabbles and the back stuff that was going on behind the scenes, I think being in those competition meetings probably did play a little bit of a role on why Chris Gabehart has left the team. But I do think there is a third reason why. And we'll get to that in just a second. Money probably played a major role in this. For Chris Gabehart, he has been with Joe Gibbs Racing for a very, very long time. He was with Joe Gibbs Racing all the way back in the late 2000s, going into the early 2010s. I think he worked as like an engineer for Kyle Busch Motorsports at one point, I'm pretty sure. And then back in 2016, around that time, he became the crew chief in the O'Reilly Series for Eric Jones. Eric Jones had an unbelievable season in 2016. I think he picked up 4 or 5 wins and made the championship for that year, and did work in the O'Reilly Series for a couple more seasons before going Cup racing in 2019. I think he also worked with Eric Jones on the number 77 car for Furniture Row Racing during the 2017 year when he was moving up at that time. And then, of course, he went to work over with Denny Hamlin, and the rest is history. I think this definitely is a pretty big loss for Joe Gibbs Racing as a whole to lose Chris Gabehart. Chris Gabehart has been a major asset to that program. Joe Gibbs Racing just had their best season across the board altogether, outside of Ty Gibbs being there, the best season they've had in many, many years. You think about the performance. Christopher Bell had 4 wins this year and had a chance to make the championship 4. And both Denny Hamlin and Chase Briscoe made the Final 4 this year. Denny Hamlin had the most wins he's had since 2020. He had 6 wins this season. And then, of course, Chase Briscoe, who had a breakout season in the NASCAR Cup Series, where Chase Briscoe was able to pick up 3 wins and make it to the championship 4 and nearly won the title, despite the fact that he had a flat tire at one point, along with Kyle Larson, who went on to win the championship. This team, losing Chris Gabehart, is going to hurt them a little bit. Now, I don't expect this team to really completely fall off in performance, drop from being like a championship level team to drop into like RCR's levels or like Spire level, for example. But I think that this team will not probably be the strongest team more than likely in 2026. So that goes to the next big question. Where's Chris Gabehart expected to go in 2026? From what a lot of reports have been put out, it sounds like Chris Gabehart is going to be headed to Spire Motorsports to be either a competition guy or be a crew chief for the team in 2026. I think that this move for Chris Gabehart going over there is a bigger move than Rodney Childers. Chris Gabehart has gotten his hands on the next-gen car and has done a phenomenal job with the next-gen car over the course of the last couple of years. And I think he's going to do a phenomenal job if it's true that he's headed over to Spire. And Spire Motorsports, like I mentioned before, they have a lot of money. And money is a major thing in motorsports in general. If you've got a lot of money behind you, you're more than likely going to get those opportunities to go there. I mean, think about this. They're bringing Daniel Suarez over to that program in 2026. We don't know who the crew chief is for him, so I have to think potentially Chris Gabehart could be the crew chief for Daniel Suarez in 2026 also, but he could be a competition director because I don't know if Ryan Sparks and Matt McCall are officially confirmed to be returning to Spire Motorsports next year. So I think this is the likely landing spot for Chris Gabehart in 2026. But I think there's much bigger stuff to this. Think about a certain driver at this moment right now who could be a free agent at the end of 2026. That is Kyle Busch. I did some digging on Chris Gabehart. He actually got really into NASCAR because of Kyle Busch's father, Tom. He worked at Kyle Busch Motorsports in the late 2000s when that team was on the up and up. So he knows Kyle Busch quite well. I'm just saying down the road a potential possibility if Daniel Suarez doesn't return to Spire after 2027 because 26, because there is a possibility that this could be a one-year deal for Daniel Suarez. And then Kyle Busch could potentially be working with Chris Gabehart. I think that would be a fantastic pairing, and I think that could rejuvenate Kyle Busch in a big way if he does end up going to Spire. But Chris Gabehart going over to Spire, that is going to put that team in a much better position. I expect Spire to have their best season across the board, not just with Carson Osborne or Michael McDowell, but I think Daniel Suarez also could run a little better in 2026 than he did in 2025. I think he's got maybe a slight upgrade now at this point. I think Spire Motorsports is putting himself in a much better position. There's a lot of frustration. They want to perform very, very well. So bring Chris Gabehart in, I think that's going to really help that team set himself up for a really good future. So we'll see how this goes. And it's not officially announced, but it sounds like that's the case for next year. I'm intrigued to see how the performance is going to be. We'll see how Chris Gabehart can do, and we'll see if he can do a really good job with the Spire Motorsports team in 2026. Kind of crazy he's no longer at Joe Gibbs Racing at the moment. So, that's for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Let's go below that and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. What are your expectations for Chris Gabehart to Spire? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. Are you shocked to see him out at Joe Gibbs Racing? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And do you think Corey Heim will have a full-time ride next year? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. We're going to probably do a video talk about that Tricon Garage announcement. We might have some other stuff that will be put in that news video as well. We also might do some coverage on the lawsuit from Friday, but I'm not entirely sure at this point if I'm going to do that video or not. Then on Saturday, we're going to have a special video drop, and I might do the lineup video, or I might do where I think every driver is going to finish championship, or that video might be going out on Sunday. I might have a video talk about manufacturers who could join NASCAR competition down the road, and also teams who could join the Cup Series. Also, Monday, there should be a NASCAR news video dropping as we get close to the end of the trial. We'll talk about that around the 25th front row stuff as well. There should be a silly season update dropping in the coming weeks as well, too, probably before Christmas time, and some other stuff should be coming as well. We got content coming in people like Haley Deegan, Shaman, Gisbergen, Carl Edwards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Wallace, Rajah Caruth, Sheldon Creed, Sam Mayer, Frankie Muniz, Cletus Afron, Dodge, Rand, Brad Keselowski, Brock Fanny, Will Brown, Cam Waters, Tony Stewart, Kate Skane, Robert Gordon, other stuff like Matt Kenseth, Connor Zillis, Junior Motorsports, Red Bull, and Name. We'll talk about all this stuff on the channel in the coming days and coming weeks as well. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching. watching today's episode. I'll see you guys next time for more great, awesome NASCAR content, other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.